The Miami Dolphins have finished last year's regular season with an 11-6 record going into the postseason, but they were outright embarrassed on national television against the Chiefs in the wildcard round. Looking at the team as a whole, the Dolphins have been one of the more slept-on teams in the NFL, all because they could not consistently beat good teams throughout last season. Despite having a star-studded offense and a star-studded defense, there is one major position in the roster that is holding them back towards winning a Super Bowl. And that is the man that I've put in the title of the vid, and Tua Tagovailoa. Tua Tagovailoa has been one of the most interesting players to talk about going into next season. We as fans have questions whether Tua Tagovailoa is the guy that can lead the Dolphins to a Super Bowl. Can he be the franchise guy long term? There is so much to consider when talking about Tua Tagovailoa. Well, in this video, I'm going to answer the question, if not tell the real truth on Tua. And before this video starts, make sure y'all subscribe. I post NBA and NFL content. Turn on post notifications so that way you don't miss anything new from me. Anyways, stay tuned and let's get this video started. Tua Tagovailoa had a tumultuous start to his NFL career, being the 5th overall pick in a very luxurious QB class back in 2020. He spent time being the second fiddle to Ryan Fitzpatrick from the beginning of the 2020 season until around October is where he became the starter for multiple games, and throughout those games, he hasn't looked too good. He doesn't look ready to be a full-on starter. He looked very inexperienced in the pocket and also him making decisions with the football, and Brian Flores decided it would be best to play Fitzpatrick in certain times of the game, despite Tua Tagovailoa being the starter in certain games. In his rookie season, Tua started in 9 out of 10 games and had over 1,800 yards, 11 TDs, and 5 picks. In the next following year, the Dolphins drafted Jalen Waddle with the 6th overall pick, and him being a speedy deep threat and a former college teammate of Tua, it was a perfect matchup. Tua in his second season had a better year than his rookie season, being more comfortable in the pocket, becoming more aggressive while being more involved on offense, starting 3 more games. Even with that, he is still viewed as an average QB in the league, but with high upside. Tua Tagovailoa has shown signs of being Drew Brees-esque as far as accuracy goes and his ball placement as well. But despite all of that, despite Brian Flores leading a Dolphins squad that was projected to be one of the more mediocre teams in the NFL to a 9-8 season, the Dolphins fired him in shocking fashion. And even me were baffled from the fact that they got rid of a coach who had 2 straight winning seasons in his 3 years as head coach for the Dolphins. But luckily, they hired an offensive genius and a guy that fits with Tua's playstyle, and Mike McDaniel. He was the same guy that was the offensive coordinator for the 49ers back in the 21 season. The same team that is coached by none other than Kyle Shanahan and actually made it all the way to the conference championship with Jimmy Garoppolo. But going back to the Dolphins, not only the Dolphins hired Mike McDaniel as head coach, but the front office traded for none other than Tyreek Hill to pair alongside Jalen Waddle and of course Tua. They also signed Raheem Mostert, Cedric Wilson, Teron Armstead, Connor Williams. That, along with a young, very solid defense, the Dolphins were projected to be one of the front runners to make it out of the AFC, and it was up to Tua to lead them to this position. After the offseason, Tua has been one of those players that have the most pressure going into that year, and in the first half of that year, it was looking like Tua is going to make a name of himself as a top 10 QB. Tua has been the most clutch QB as well as one of the more efficient deep passers in the league, really because of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. But even with that, with McDaniel's scheme, along with having Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as deep threats and Raheem Mostert at the running back position, the Dolphins were the most explosive offense in the NFL, but that was only in the first 9 games. We all know that Tua has been dealing with multiple concussion issues throughout that season and even missed 4 games because of that. But even with that, Tua in the last 5 games has not been fucking good. During that stretch, Tua completed a measly 55% of his passes for over 1,200 yards and only 7 TDs and 5 picks. And by the way, the Dolphins were 1-4 during that stretch, including losing 4 straight games. Despite the majority being in close games, the Dolphins, along with Tua's underperformance, they couldn't close out games. It didn't make it better that Tua dealt with more concussion issues during that time and sat for the remainder of the season. Fortunately, the Dolphins made it to the playoffs where they faced the Bills in the wild card and almost got a playoff win without Tua, but ultimately they cannot close out the game in the wild card. Now going into the offseason, the Dolphins made another big-time move by trading for Jalen Ramsey to pair alongside Xavier Howard to form a top secondary duo. Later in the 23 season, the Dolphins traded for Bradley Chubb to bolster the edge alongside Jalen Phillips. The Miami Dolphins are now even more in the conversation to make it out of the AFC. In the first 3 games of the season, it was looking like this, especially putting up 70 points against the Broncos. Tua was getting early MVP votes that year. The Dolphins were still a very explosive offense, but against teams with a below 500 record. But against teams that are above 500, that's a different story. Even though Tua had statistically his best year as a QB, but when you actually watch the games, you will see that those stats don't really align to the eye test. And in fact, his passing yards, which is by the way, was the most in the NFL, majority of it is coming from Tyreek Hill's all-time great season last year. And so it inflates the stats. And 2, whether an elite defense like Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, or even Tennessee, once you get rid of his first read, which is Tyreek Hill, he cannot pick apart a defense, which will lead to boneheaded turnovers, let alone decisions with the football, and he cannot make a spectacular play consistently without a Tyreek Hill nor the over-reliance of a Mike McDaniel. And that's the thing what separates him compared to all the elite QBs in the game. We saw this especially in the last 5 games of the regular season where Tua Tagovailoa struggled against the Tennessee Titans, especially down the stretch in the 4th quarter, when the Titans, like I said, took away his read and he got scared, which led to bad mistakes, ultimately losing that game. And then against the Cowboys, in which they barely won, but Tua only won 2 games against teams with above 500 records. And then in the last 2 games of the season, the Dolphins got smacked by the Ravens. Destroyed, with Tua playing very subpar, as well as in the Bills game where he also underperformed as well. And then going to the wildcard game, Tua once again was fucking poor and got shut down by the Chiefs defense. From the stat sheet, may say that he's an elite quarterback, but looking at that eye test, not so much. Ever since Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel came in for Miami, they have transformed the offense, not Tua. Tua came in and benefited off of Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel's play scheme. And I know people are going to tell me in the comment section, bro, isn't the team's job to surround Tua with the best weapons and the coach to win? Yes, but there's a difference between being a star player that has in the supporting cast and being a guy that is getting benefited by a superstar receiver and an offensive genius. Tua, especially in key games where they are facing above 500 teams, he has not performed at a level of a star QB. Once an elite defense figure him out, he's fucked. And now going into his 5th year with an aspiring rookie contract, this is a make or break year for Tua Tagovailoa. Can he be the long-term QB and the same QB that is going to get paid about $50 million per year? So far, Tua has not proven he can win you a playoff game nor win against teams that are above 500. And if he stinks it up against good to great teams next year while also not winning a playoff game, then it's probably best that the Miami Dolphins move on from Tua. So in conclusion, I think Tua is definitely a starting level QB for at least an average team, but not a guy you can rely on as far as winning you playoff games as well as winning you Super Bowls. And if he can't put it all together in the regular season and in the postseason, then it's time for a new change at QB. Thank y'all for watching this vid. Is Tua Tagovailoa overrated? Let me know in the comment section below, and make sure y'all subscribe and tune in for more NBA and NFL content in the future. Turn on post notifications, and that is all. Stay litty. This is the A-Man Show. Sign out.